All right, let's go ahead and practice solving some two-step and multi-step equations together. So in this first problem, let's go ahead and write the original equation. We have this 3x, which is 3 times x, and then minus 10. So we have two operations here. We have multiplication and subtraction, and this is all equal to 38. Now we're going to go ahead and apply the addition property of equality. So let's go ahead and see what would we add to both sides here. Well, on the left side, we're taking away 10. So it kind of makes sense if we're going to use the addition property of equality to add 10 because that's the additive inverse to a negative 10, right? So let's go ahead and write the rest of this equation down. Let's go ahead and add 10 to both sides of the equation. Using the additive inverse property by adding this negative 10 and positive 10 together, we're going to get 0. So we're going to get 3x plus 0. And that's going to be equal to, and if we go ahead and simplify the right side, we can add those constant terms to get 48. Then using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and just say we have 3x is equal to 48. All right, cool. So that's taking care of one of the operations. Now let's go ahead and take care of that 3. We really want that coefficient to be 1. So we got the constant to be 0. We want the coefficient to be 1. Let's go ahead and use the division property of equality. So on the left side, let's go ahead and divide by 3. And on the right side, let's go ahead and take the 48 and also divide that by 3. Okay, so if we go ahead and use the multiplicative inverse property, 3 divided by 3, or 3 times 1/3, is just going to be 1. So we have 1x is equal to, and then if we simplify the right side, 48 divided by 3 is going to be 16. Then using the identity property of multiplication, we can say 1x is just x, and that's equal to 16 here. Okay, let's try another one. For number 2, we have another equation. It's another two-step one, it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy it down. Negative 42 is equal to negative 9y plus 30. It says to use the subtraction property of equality, and that makes sense because we see this plus 30 here. So let's take the negative 42 on the left side. Let's go ahead and take away 30 from the left side. And let's go ahead and also take away 30 from the right side. Let's go ahead and add 30 here. Let's go ahead and take away 30 on the right side as well. Now, on the left side, let's just go ahead and simplify this. Negative 42 minus 30 is going to be negative 72. And then on the right side, we can go ahead and use the additive inverse property. 30 minus 30, or 30 plus negative 30, is going to be 0. So we're going to get negative 9y plus 0. Now, using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and say this is negative 72 is equal to negative 9y. So we got the constant term on the right side to be 0. Let's go ahead and use the division property of equality to get the coefficient of y to be 1. So let's go ahead and take the negative 72 on the left side. Let's divide that by negative 9. Because on the right side, we're going to take this negative 9y and also divide this by negative 9. Okay. On the left side, a negative divided by negative is a positive, so we're going to get positive 8. And on the right side, we have negative 9y divided by negative 9, or negative 9 over 1 times negative 1 over 9. So those are multiplicative inverses, so we're going to get 1, so it's going to be 1y. And then using the identity property of multiplication, we can say that 8 is equal to y. Or you could turn it around and say that y is equal to 8. All right, let's check out number 3. For number 3, let's go ahead and write down the original equation. We have negative 14 is equal to k divided by 3, or k over 3, plus 8. Now we want to use the subtraction property of equality first, which makes sense because that's the inverse of adding 8. It's going to be subtracting 8. So let's take this negative 14 here. Let's go ahead and take away 8 on the left side of the equation. Then we have this k over 3. And we have this plus 8, but let's go ahead and take away 8 on the right side so we keep things balanced. On the left side here, negative 14 minus 8, that's negative 14 plus negative 8. That's going to be negative 22. And on the right side, we have this k divided by 3. And using the additive inverse property, 8 minus 8, or 8 plus negative 8, that's going to be 0. Using the identity property of addition, we can go ahead and drop that 0 and say negative 22 is equal to k divided by 3. Okay, so we have a one-step equation now. Let's go ahead and use the multiplication property of equality because we have this k divided by 3, or k times a third if you want to think about it that way. That's fine too. So let's go ahead and take this negative 22 on the left side. Let's multiply it by 3 on the left side of the equation. And let's take this k over 3 and let's multiply this by 3 over 1 on the right side. So again, there's this invisible 1 here, so the 3 over 1 is the multiplicative inverse. On the left side, we have negative 66, and on the right side, we're going to get 1k, just because 1/3 times 3 over 1 is just 1, so we have 1k. And so negative 66 is equal to k. All right, cool. Let's try another one. in this one for number 4, let's go ahead and write down the original equation. We have negative 12 is equal to 4 times the quantity of this 2x minus 7. So the first property we're going to use here is the distributive property. So let's go ahead and distribute. There are 4 of each of these terms on the inside here. So we can say this is going to be negative 12 is equal to, and 4 of these 2x's is going to be 8x's, and then 4 of these negative 7's is going to be a negative 28. So you could write plus negative 28, or you can just write minus 28 because it's a little simpler. Then using the addition property of equality, we have this minus 28. So let's go ahead and add 28 to both sides here. So we have negative 12. We're going to add 28 on the left side. And on the right side, we have 8x minus 28. Let's go ahead and add 28 on the right side here. All right, on the left side, negative 12 plus 28 is going to be 16. And on the right side, we have 8x. And then using the additive inverse property, these add to get 0. Okay. Using the identity property of addition, we can go ahead and drop that 0 and just say 16 is equal to 8x. Then using the multiplication property of equality, let's see, what could we use here? I guess you could use the division property of equality, but it says use multiplication, right? So you could divide both sides by 8, but think about how else you could use the multiplication property of equality. We could multiply both sides here by 1/8, right? That would also get you that same value that we're looking for, which is 1. So if we take this 8x here, and then we multiply that by 1/8, that's the multiplicative inverse for the coefficient of 8, right? So on the left side, if we simplify, 16 times 1/8, or an eighth of 16, is going to be 2. And on the right side, 8 times 1/8 is just going to be 1, so we have 1x, so x is going to be equal to 2. All right, let's go ahead and try some problems here where we don't have the justifications kind of written right next to us, but we're going to make sure we kind of still think through the process and make sure we understand what we're doing as we go. So for number 5, let's go ahead and start with a property of equality. We're always going to go ahead and see if we can get 0 first for the constant term on the same side as the variable. So let's go ahead and use the addition property of equality. If we do that, we're going to get negative 4x plus 0 is equal to, I think, 48 here. And using the identity property of addition, we just use the additive inverse property here, right, to get 0. But using the identity property, we're going to say negative 4x is equal to 48. Then let's go ahead and use the division property of equality and divide both sides by negative 4. If we go ahead and do that, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. So we have 1x is equal to negative 12. And there we just use the multiplicative inverse property along the way. And using the identity property of multiplication, we can drop the 1 and say x equals negative 12. So right here, this would be our solution. So it does say to go ahead and check these solutions mentally, so I'm not going to write it down, but if you take this negative 12 and plug it in here, negative 4 times negative 12 is positive 48, but then 48 minus 13 is 35, so that works out. All right, let's check number 6. For number 6, this looks like a great example to use the distributive property for. So let's go ahead and leave the left side alone first, but let's distribute the right side. So take the negative 69 is equal to negative 3 times 5y is going to be negative 15y. And then technically this is a negative 7, right? So negative 3 times negative 7 is going to be positive 21. So we just distributed, and now let's go ahead and solve this two-step equation. We'll start with the subtraction property of equality and take away 21 from both sides of the equation. If we go ahead and do that, on the left side, we're going to get negative, I think that's going to be what, negative 90, right? Negative 90 is equal to negative 15y plus, and then using the additive inverse property, we're going to get 0. Using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and say negative 90 is equal to negative 15y. Then using the division property of equality, we can divide both sides by negative 15. Negative 90 divided by negative 15 is going to be 6. And on the right side, negative 15 divided by negative 15 is 1y. Okay, so that's using the multiplicative inverse property. And then using the identity property of multiplication, we can say that y is equal to 6, or 6 is equal to y. And feel free to turn that around if you'd like to also. If you want to go ahead and check this mentally, take the 6 here and substitute it here. 5 times 6 is going to be 30. 30 minus the 7 is going to be 23. And 23 times a negative 3 is negative 69. So this does work out. Here's number 7. For number 7, we have a two-step equation. Doesn't look like we have any distribution, which is kind of nice. That's one less step to worry about. Let's start with the addition property of equality. Let's add 24 to both sides of the equation. We go ahead and add 24. we're going to get 5m, and using the additive inverse property, we're going to get 0. And on the right side here, negative 59 plus 24 is going to be negative 35. Using the identity property of addition, we can drop the 0 and say 5m equals negative 35. Then using the division property of equality, we can divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5, or 5 times a fifth, that's the multiplicative inverse property. We get 1m equals. Then negative 35 divided by 5 is negative 7. And using the identity property of multiplication, we can say m equals negative 7. Cool. So if we want to go ahead and check this, take this negative 7 and plug it in here. 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. Negative 35 minus 24 is the same thing as negative 35 plus negative 24. And that does equal negative 59, so that works. All right, for one final practice problem for number 8, looks like we do have to do some distribution here. So let's distribute first this negative 8 to both of these terms. Negative 8 times 4n is going to be negative 32n. And then negative 8 times 6 is going to be negative 48. So you could write plus negative 48, or you can just write minus 48, which is what I'm going to do because it's a little less writing here. Okay, so we have a two-step equation here. Let's go ahead and take care of the minus 48 using the addition property of equality. Let's add 48 to both sides of the equation. If we go ahead and do that, we're going to get negative 32n plus nothing is going to be equal to 96. We just use the additive inverse property. Now, using the identity property of addition, we can write negative 32n is equal to 96. And using the division property of equality, we can divide both sides by negative 32. And using the multiplicative inverse property, negative 32 over negative 32, or negative 32 times 1 over negative 32 is going to be 1n, or just 1 multiplied by n. And on the right side, 96 times 1 over negative 32, or divided by negative 32, is going to be negative 3. And using the multiplication identity property, we can say that n is equal to negative 3. So I think this right here would be our solution. Let's go ahead and check it though. Take this negative 3, plug it in here. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 plus 6 is going to be negative 6. If we take this negative 6 and multiply it by negative 8, we do get positive 48. So that seems to check out just fine. So all right, cool. So there you have 8 different practice problems. Where hopefully you got a little bit better about solving these multi-step or two-step equations. Some of them you had to distribute first before you could do the two-step equations. Just look out for that. And yeah, so hopefully you found the video helpful. If you did, please consider giving the video a thumbs up and sharing with a classmate or friend who might also find it helpful. And as always, keep up the great work that you're already doing.